It's that special time again. That's right, if you felt like there's been something missing from your thrillless life since September, it was most likely the lack of Republican presidential primary debates. Debate number 3 was an improvement from the last. It was much more substantive as the candidates got to spend more time actually answering the questions. This at least partially had to do with more of the fat being trimmed, so to speak. Our favorite Great Plains governor, Doug Burgum, had failed to qualify for this debate due to his abysmal polling numbers, effectively ending his campaign. Former Vice President Mike Pence quite literally did end his campaign several days before this debate.
Why do birds?
And once again, there was no Trump, who, despite his legal troubles, is firmly perched in a distant first place, watching the other candidates essentially squabble for runner-up. The debate started off with a simple question. Why should voters pick you over Trump? DeSantis, knowing his window of opportunity is closing with each passing debate, goes harder and harder after Trump.
Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing.
And pitches himself as a winner.
In Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County.
Nikki Haley highlights the current chaos in the world and says we need to move on from Trump.
You've got an open border where terrorists can come through, and we've got wars happening all over us. I can tell you that I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president now.
Ramaswamy outlines that the Trump era has produced loss after loss.
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018. 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023.
Notice he doesn't pin the blame on Trump explicitly, knowing he needs a lot of his supporters to win, so he blames Ronna McDaniel, the head of the Republican National Committee, instead.
For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you.
Then he goes after the media, specifically the moderators.
Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. And so the fact of the matter is, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Roberts.
This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you?
Christie continues to be the most hostile to Trump.
We need to decide which president is going to be the one to tackle the big issues, who's going to make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world. Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country, right, and it needs to be said plainly.
And Scott talks about religion's role in government.
It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. But America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation. Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies, matter.
Now the conversation turns to Israel and Gaza. Every candidate supports Israel unequivocally, so the conversation quickly becomes about who can talk the toughest and seem the strongest.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them.
In fact, I would go one step further. What I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as President of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border.
They know GOP voters are pro-Israel and likely will prefer a candidate who seems the most pro-Israel. And even though most of these candidates will likely do the exact same thing on this issue while in office, they gotta sound the toughest. This is, of course, a dynamic that plays out with tons of issues.
And I would tell Prime Minister Prime Minister Netanyahu, wipe Hamas off of the map.
I'm sick of hearing the media, I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself.
The last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel.
Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida.
Ramaswamy, always trying to stick out by being the most outrageous candidate on stage, does his thing.
And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
Most people didn't catch this, but notice Ramaswamy said 2 of them. He's probably referring to DeSantis, who has been caught wearing very lifted shoes. This is DeSantis trying to walk in those shoes during one of the commercial breaks. But Haley had a good one-liner in response.
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them. I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition.
We've got 2 of you on stage.
I don't know if you've noticed yet in my previous videos, but even though we're here trying to choose the most powerful job on earth, the candidate with the best one-liners usually wins the debates. What do one-liners have to do with being president? You tell me. But at the same time, I love watching these overconfident narcissists, aka politicians, zing each other. So I'm as guilty as anyone, and I'd be sad if the one-liners ever went away, so go figure. Anyway, Tim Scott goes after Iran, who's funding Hamas and other terrorist organizations.
I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
So does DeSantis.
You harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay.
The topic moves to students at American colleges that have voiced support for Hamas, which starts an interesting debate that pits 2 things against each other the current GOP values heavily: free speech and support for Israel.
These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They are fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship, telling student groups to disband, mark my words, soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist.
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked.
The topic turns to Ukraine funding and whether or not the candidates support more U.S. aid.
Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news.
Ramaswamy stands alone on the stage by ruling out any future aid for Ukraine.
Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky.
Interestingly enough, Ukrainian President Zelensky is Jewish.
And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it.
Haley fundamentally disagrees with Ramaswamy.
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see that. We all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win.
Christie jumps in with some World War II comparisons.
Kirsten, let's remember the last time that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe. It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000 Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. The absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
DeSantis tries to pivot away, attempting to avoid being on the record on this divisive and potentially unpopular issue.
We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border. If you look at the threats that we face, terrorists have come in through our southern border. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share. And we need to get serious about the top threat that this country faces, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
The next question is about China and how we will contain their growing power on the world stage.
There's nothing China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back.
So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy.
Ramaswamy takes a swipe at DeSantis.
What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians.
Yes, I think that China is the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose.
And Haley and DeSantis have a little spar.
But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it, and of course we banned
He
China from buying
scrubbed the
land.
website
Not
last
exactly
week.
a
Go
great
check.
recruiting pitch if you're banning them from purchasing land
scrubbed
at
the
all.
website
So we've stood
last
up
week.
and we've done the right thing.
Moderators asked how the candidates would address the immensely popular Chinese-owned app, TikTok.
And let me say this. TikTok is not only spyware. It is polluting the minds of American young people.
And Ramaswamy gets personal.
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching to
out of your
anybody else,
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it, and that's actually the point.
Haley gets even more personal.
Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer.
And they keep going. It seems like they genuinely dislike each other. Every primary cycle needs at least one of these.
When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend.
You know, when he talks about me praising China, he doesn't know the fact that the reason China was praised was because I negotiated with China and Russia the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation. That is literally the reason North Korea stopped testing ballistic missiles. So I said China did good on their part. That was a negotiation you could never do.
What you said, Nikki. Those are your words, not mine. And so just own up to it.
You would never
you can
have
change
been able
your
to
mind.
get
That's
that
allowed.
negotiation
But don't
done.
lie to the people about what you've said or what you've done in
China
South Carolina.
my
You have brought
entire
them to South
career at
Carolina.
the
Ron is
United
right about
Nations.
that.
The topic now switches to inflation and what immediate steps the candidates can take to curb the rising of prices.
The first thing I would do as President of the United States is I would sign the XL Keystone Pipeline and start seeing resources flow.
Of course, it's an impossible question to answer because there isn't anything that can be done really to bring down prices right away, but candidates throw what they can at the wall.
We can reduce the price of energy, we can reduce the price of food and the price of electricity if we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan.
What can you do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics. I'm going to rip it up, and I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs.
Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Increase the supply of labor in this country. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work.
We are going to unleash every bit of American energy, every bit of its potential. What happens in the futures markets? The prices go down.
And I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Next is Social Security and how the candidates plan to keep the program solvent as it is projected to run out of money in the near future. This is another interesting issue, as Republicans have historically wanted to weaken Social Security ever since FDR in the 1930s. But back in 2016, Trump famously campaigned on zero cuts to Social Security, shrewdly recognizing that older voters who were the base of the GOP party are extremely protective of the retirement program. So notice that even if candidates talk about hypothetical cuts to the program, it would only apply to young people.
Now look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s, I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security.
What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say, we're going to change the rules. You change the retirement age for them. Instead of cost of living increases, we should go to increases based on inflation. We should limit benefits on the wealthy.
Ramaswamy won't cut Social Security. Instead, he would still save money in other ways.
But her math assumes $7 trillion of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Then you go to zero-based budgeting. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with zero as the baseline and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe. In the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy.
And then Scott is asked if he would cut the program too.
Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather receiving Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security.
Yes or
you
no,
and I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no,
answer
though?
is no.
DeSantis is also against any cuts.
Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you raise the retirement age?
When life expectancy is declining, I don't see how you could raise it the other direction. So it's one thing to peg it on life expectancy, but we have had a significant decline in life expectancy in this country,
So you
and
rule
that's
it
just
out.
the fact.
Candidates are then asked what they would do about the fentanyl crisis.
We're declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to deport people who came illegally. And I'm even going to build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build a wall. If someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Go to the source. It is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow stops. The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers are, and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer that it is.
What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home.
Ramaswamy, like always, goes one step further than everyone else.
The other thing that hasn't been discussed is the northern border. Don't just build the wall, build both walls.
Coming off large electoral losses driven by the abortion issue just the day before this debate, the candidates are asked if they support a federal abortion ban. And candidates, knowing that a federal ban is a losing issue in a general election, moderate themselves on the topic.
We're better off when we can promote a culture of life. At the same time, I understand that some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as New Hampshire.
Post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There are some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest, it's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws.
Tim Scott finds himself with the most extreme abortion position on stage.
I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit I would challenge both Nikki and Ron to join me at a 15-week limit.
I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Candidates are asked during closing statements to mention anything they felt was important and didn't get a chance to talk about. We'll end with some of the things they said.
We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in prayer. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men.
And I will make sure that I return honesty, integrity to the Oval Office. We deserve and should accept nothing less.
I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class.
The world is on fire. We have a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march.
I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the election. I will be a leader you can be proud of, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis, thank you.
And there you have it, the third Republican presidential primary debate. Will it change anything? Probably not. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments anyway. Tell me about something you noticed, or feel free to ask me a question. I see all your comments, and they always make my day, so thank you guys. Until next time, everyone.